Hey besties, I'm Victoria, and welcome to the Book Besteas Podcast, where the books are good, the takes are honest, and the tea is always hot. Today we're chatting The Legacy, Book 5, and the finale of the off campus series by Elle Kennedy. And we're going to talk about the TV adaptation. All right, let's dive in. Going into this book, I kind of had an idea of where they would be at in terms of timeline, like maybe like 4-ish years out of college. And I liked where it was at because I think it's a good place for couples to kind of reevaluate where they stand in terms of their relationship. And I liked that they had each couple kind of had their own sections and that there was overlap between the sections. What I did not like was the puck bunnies and the passing around of Alexander, because to me that was just so unnecessary. I felt like, who cares? Like, yeah, sure, like it could be like a one and done thing, like pass it along, but I feel like it just took up too much of the book's content. And then the Puck Bunny thing, like, sure, I'm pretty sure it happens, maybe to the extent that it does in the book. And I guess there could be moments of it, but again, just like with Alexander, I felt like it was too dragged out. So I'm mostly going to talk about everything around that. Okay. And we're going to kind of go in chronological order because that's how we sort of learn about pieces of all the couples as they're given. Let's start with Grace and Logan. So out of the four couples, I would think that Grace and Logan's relationship is the most healthy and stable based on what we learned from this book. First of all, I think that they talk out things. I love that even though they had a little bit of miscommunication regarding where they stand in their relationship, they knew for sure that they were endgame. And then after the car incident, they just eloped. I love that. The car incident itself was so relatable. I mean, being from the Midwest, I know how it's like to get stuck in the snow. I mean, I try to take precautions to not get stuck or just to not go out if I don't have to. But it was really cute the way that they handled it and just had conversations in the car that are really deep, but also their sexy moments. Grace was kind of like, oh, I'm no longer freshman Grace, I'm sophomore Grace. Well, now Grace is a sexy woman who could really embrace that intersexuality and can even role play with Logan by showing up at the bar like she's not his girlfriend. Ooh, I mean, right off the bat, when we start the scene, I knew it was her, but the way that she was agreeing to have sex in the washroom, like old Grace, even sophomore Grace, would never, right? Obviously, she looked up the sanitation standards of the washroom before she agreed to it, but still, like, she would never have had that kind of sexy moment with him in public. No way. I love that. I think Grace has come such a long way. Whereas, and this is not to say it's a problem, I feel like Logan is almost one and the same. Like, his arc in their book was very much an arc. Like, he grew a lot, but after he grew, like, he's pretty much been that same person. He still goes to Garrett for advice. And then we have him just being like, I know she's endgame. Like, let's do this thing. Just kind of like how he showed up at her door and he thought, hey, she's cute. Let's, hang out a little bit more. When that moment happened in the car, he's just like, why don't we just do this thing? Like, seal the deal. I love that he's not going to let this issue linger longer. Him being away all the time, he's making time regardless. And then second is he's not going to let it linger in terms of her feeling like, oh, what's happening with our relationship? And they both were willingly, happily going to elope. I love that. Let's move on to Allie and Dean. I feel like they both are pretty much exactly the same as they were in college. Their relationship too, in the sense that they love to talk sexy and dirty. They make that kind of part of their humor, their romance, and I love that. What I think they kind of differed on, at least with Dean, is that this time around, he's not as patient with her in terms of letting her come to the conclusion on her own that she's ready to agree to be like forever. In her mind, he's the one, but she's not ready for marriage and everything that follows. In her mind, she thinks that is what it's supposed to be. And even though they've had multiple conversations where the book suggests and everyone in the group suggests that she's been very straightforward about the fact that she does not want to get married anytime soon, he still proposes. And the moment when he goes to Garrett and Logan to practice, and they have no clue that she's already told him multiple times she doesn't want to get married until later on, right? And in the moment, his fake proposal methods are all about like, oh, I love effing you. And Garrett's just like, nah, what the hell are you doing? And then Logan's like, no. I think this is good. And I guess Logan was paying more attention to them because Allie definitely is okay with that dirty talk. I mean, when they're eating that dinner and then her mouth is stuffed and she's immediately like, yeah, he's probably imagining me going down on him. And then he admitted. And they were totally cool with that. Also, during that dinner, right when it starts and she sees that he's dressed up and he's got all of her favorite takeout food, which is really sweet, by the way. I love that. She's immediately like, shit, I messed up. I forgot whatever anniversary this is supposed to be. It's funny because it's none of those things. He's just proposing. And then when she turns him down, he thinks that's Cinco de Mayo, and it's like, oh, you're just so hung up on the fact that it's a holiday and therefore I can't propose on this holiday. No. She's like, wait a second. It's because we cannot get married right now. But then his heart breaks and then he stalks off like the dean he is. I'm glad that he comes to his senses later on and he apologizes to her. Hot take, I don't think that she needed to apologize to him because I think she made it abundantly clear in their various conversations that she was not ready. So if he really wanted to get engaged at this time, I feel like he should have had a conversation with her instead of just getting on his knee and pulling out the ring. Because it puts a lot of pressure on the both of them. In that moment, he feels extra rejected when he's actually doing it and then she said no, which is what happened. Versus if it were another conversation where he's explaining why, and using the analogy of her coworker, why he's on a different rung or why his ladder has different gaps between the rungs. I love that analogy, by the way. I think that he should have had a very candid conversation with her about the fact that he needs to feel more secure and therefore he wants to propose. That does not mean that they need to get married and have kids right away. Because of the way he handled it, and then afterward he said hurtful things and then she said hurtful things in return, there was a little bit of hurt on both sides. And I'm glad that he went to Garrett and Garrett was like, yeah, so let me get this straight. She told you so many times that she doesn't want it and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. And obviously, when Garrett put it that way, Dean's like, wait. Also, I love when Logan finds out, and then at first he's like, oh yeah, totally chill that you'll propose at my wedding. And then as the conversation progresses, you could tell he's just being sarcastic. And he's basically like, I will haunt you forever if you ruin Sabrina's moment as a bride. It was just so funny because who else is going to make Dean stand down other than one of his besties literally threatening him because the bestie does not want his wife to have a not so good wedding. Obviously, I think that it was really funny, really cute, obviously a little bit frustrating for Allie. Another hot take, I don't think she had to propose in return. I feel like she was feeling a little bit apologetic for turning him down, which I don't think was necessary, like I said, but then also she could let him propose again on their new terms for what follows after the proposal. If she felt like it, she felt like it. I just didn't think it needed to be in an apologetic way, if that makes sense. I'm glad that they all worked out. Let's move on to Sabrina and Tucker. I'm torn because I love Sabrina so much. At the same time, I feel like after their first book, she should have been more aware of the fact that, first of all, he puts his needs on the back burner, and therefore she needs to be even more proactive in like kind of sussing out from him where he stands in terms of like his career or anything else. While I understand that it can be very frustrating when a partner isn't clear about that, I think that because he's her lifetime partner and he's done so much for her already, like accommodating her, that she should go the extra mile for him, even though that's compensating for him not being straightforward. And then on the flip side, Obviously it would be better if Tucker was more direct about what he needs and wants. When he says that it's not a big deal that he's feeling bored with the bar, and then she goes, My partner's happiness is a big deal, like something like that. And I'm glad that they had that conversation. I'm glad that they also had the trip where a lot of things went wrong, but that also meant that they figured things out as a couple without being parents. Because, like I talked about in their individual book, their partnership as parents is better than their partnership as a couple because they have a very strong sense of responsibility toward their kid. But in terms of toward each other, I feel like that wasn't quite established yet before the kid came into the picture. So now they're kind of working through what that means. And I'm glad that by the end of the trip, Sabrina concluded that I could put aside my concerns about like the future and everything else until after this trip, because this trip is for us, because they just had not had enough time for them. And I'd say that in a kind of passive way because really what Tucker's trying to tell her in his angry state, which he should have said more calmly, is that she actually had more agency over the amount of time that they could have together. It's because she kept actively choosing things that would take a lot more of her time outside the home, and therefore they had very little chances to be together. And then when they are home together, she insists on leaving the bedroom door open and constantly having Jamie involved in things instead of just having them two together. Because, I mean, they have a support system. Tucker's mom is in town and can take Jamie at any point in time. She'd love to. It's just that Sabrina has a hard time of letting go. And she's always had a hard time of letting go with everything. It's not just when they had a kid. There's a lot of things that she needs to work on herself. One of them being finding better work-life balance in general, but then also letting go of control to other people, even if that means that it's not done the way that she wants it to be done. And this is something I personally have struggled with, but over the years I've realized that that prevents me from getting things done, enough things done, or it doesn't allow me to reach my goals because I'm just too focused on the minutia of detail that doesn't really matter, and I need to hand off more things, delegate. I very much relate to Sabrina. Maybe that's why I like her so much. I see so much of her grit and determination, but also her stubbornness in myself. And so that therefore I could really empathize with her. But at the same time, like I know my areas of improvement and they're very similar to hers as well. Also, I love at the end, the couple from the island is offering both of them jobs that seem like dream jobs for them to respectively and for their family unit. I love that. I mean, can I go on a trip with my partner and end up with that, please? Because that would be the greatest gift ever. I would love that. I love that couple, and they're cute together, and they're just the fairy godmothers almost of Sabrina and Tucker. I love that. The advice that they give them, I think it's, you can get advice from your friends and family, people that are close to you who know you really well, but sometimes you really need an outsider to see like really objectively the situation and then go, actually, it's this. And I think that that couple really does that for Sabrina and Tucker, and it helps them so much with figuring things out. And by the end of their trip, they really have figured things out. Nothing's really decided yet, but they know what they need to change in terms of their decision-making process. And that is the most important thing. And decision-making as a couple. I love that. And finally, Hannah and Garrett. I would say Hannah has come a very long way, but Garrett is still very much his college self, and not in a good way. Why I say that is Hannah has come very far in terms of her self-esteem. She is no longer feeling guilty about being someone who was raped, and she is pursuing her career without fear. She's really successful at that now, but still so grounded and humble. Like when she gets a $300,000 check, she immediately, first of all, thinks, I want to pay off my parents' debt. Oh my God, the woman that she is. And it no longer is because she feels guilt toward her parents, but rather she just thinks that that's just the right thing to do. And second is that she is recognizing that in this industry, fame could be a very fleeting thing. One moment you could be super popular, the next one nobody remembers you. And that's how I think that she's grounded, is that she recognizes that. So she's not going to get over her head and go, oh, yeah, I'm the hot shit, which is very opposite to Garrett, because Garrett's ego is way up there. I think out of all of the guys in this series, his is up there. But at the same time, maybe the really big ego is kind of masking his trauma that he has not worked through. When I was going through the episode for their book, I said multiple times that Garrett needs to go to therapy. And even up until this book, he still hasn't. And that is really, really bogging him down personally, but also their relationship. Because now let's go into the pregnancy thing, because we've established that Garrett is still not in a good place mentally with regard to his dad's stuff. And then on top of that, being a pro athlete means that he's all over the place and he's exhausted all the time. So those two things combined does impact their relationship, because Hannah feels like, well, I'm pretty much alone all the time, which when she's just pursuing her career and working hard in the studio, like, it's manageable. But when you think that a kid is coming into the picture, she's immediately and understandably being like, well, how would I take care of a kid myself? And on the one hand, I think, it's not fair for Garrett to be one of the last people to find out. But at the same time, the girls in the group find out mostly because they accidentally stumble upon it in the washroom, not because she told them. Like, her intention was never for Garrett to find out last. But it just happened that way. And then second of all, he's not creating an environment at home whereby she feels comfortable to say that she's pregnant. Because he's always, whenever he gets worked up about his dad, which seems to be happening more and more often the more he gets famous, he like goes into himself, is how she describes it. And because of that, she never feels like she can actually connect with him. I mean, even when they're having that moment in the car, he just immediately took it out on her. I understand, okay, maybe in that moment he's really upset, right? But then even later on, when they get to the hospital, and then she's like, okay, now we're having the conversation. What do you want to do about it? And then even just thinking about being a father, and then how he doesn't want to be like his father, what if he becomes his father, all these things, he starts spiraling, and then again going back into himself, to the point where she's like, well, I guess I'm talking to myself again. She just feels very unseen and unheard, and she's been really patient about it for a while. But now with a baby in the picture, she's not sure that it would be fair to the baby and herself for him to keep, pulling back like that in these really difficult moments. So I could totally get why she did not tell him immediately. Also, in the moments where she did try to support him and say, hey, I think you got to have a talk with him, he immediately like lashed out at her. It's like, you don't understand. Or like, back off. And then when she's like, maybe you should tell the public what happened so that your dad can no longer gaslight you into doing things like that interview, he still is like, well, she's just doing therapy speak. She could say what she wants, but I don't want to be embarrassed. Those choice of words are very key, because that's telling me that he thinks that it's a weak thing to be exposing his history. I'm glad later on he finally gets to the point where he's willing to listen to her. And then he considers that, oh, maybe me sharing my story means that other kids who are experiencing the same thing will be seen and heard, at the very least. If not, more awareness will be built around this issue because of my fame. And that he also recognizes that she's always been there for him. She's been trying to help him get through this, and he just hasn't been listening. So when she again says that I'm proud of you, he acknowledges that she's been there and trying to help him all along, not trying to make him feel like a victim or shame or anything. And that's really important for their relationship, and especially if they become parents, because I would never want a scenario where the kid does something and then he kind of just blames himself, and then just like he again goes back into himself, and then she has to fix everything. That's just that's not fair to the kid. That's not fair to her. And I hope that after this book, if he were a real person, he does go get therapy. Let's talk about some of the good things, though, because I feel like it's just like all negative things about Garrett. Garrett's a really sweet guy. He clearly loves her so much. He values her. He respects her. It was of a defense mechanism whenever he would lash out at her when she talked about his dad. But when he is his real self is when he offered to pay off her parents' debt as soon as he got the multi-million-dollar contract. And while they turned it down, like, the intention still stands, and he's really sweet. He makes time for her regardless of how busy he is. He's always proactively contacting her, even though she's usually just okay, like, doing her own thing, but he's the one who's like texting and message, like calling and being like, hey, what you up to, blah 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 blah. Like, basically she's very much his rock. And then him saying, after he finally came to, he's like, I will like buy the house across the street to ensure that you have support with the kid while I'm away. Okay, there we go. Garrett, you stepped up. All right. Okay, let's talk about the guy friendships. First of all, I love that they're still in contact. The fact that they made an effort despite being in different cities, having very different schedules, them figuring out Tucker's bachelor party, having all of the former players come, having the bachelor party at the hockey rink with the locker rooms and situation. That was so sweet. I love that. And then Dean's practice proposal with Garrett and Logan. Again, with the whole Logan being like, I'll haunt you forever if you ruin Sabrina's moment. Love that. I mean, their women come first, and then their broskies come second. But they're still, very much like besties, and I love that, guys. I also love that their group chat is named Best Buds Forever. I can't. And then when they have the coach, I've mentioned the coach in previous episodes, and I love that the coach is still in their lives, still comes to Tucker's wedding, has a girlfriend now. And then it's so funny when they're imagining what type of sex, or if the coach even has sex, and then the girlfriend like just pops out of nowhere and is like confirming. Okay, the girlfriend ship's not much to say except that it's cute that all of the girlfriends are still hanging out, because like really only Hannah and Allie were friends during college. The rest of them just kind of met through the boys. So the fact that they have their own girls chat and they talk a lot about the gossip from the sports magazines, like saying like, oh, Logan and Garrett are a couple now, or some stuff like that, is really funny. And I love that they show up for Sabrina's bachelorette party, and Sabrina again is just the humble, kind woman she is. She's like moved to tears with the fact that they just showed up. Oh, that's really sweet. And then little Jamie, I mean, she's such an adorable little munchkin. Like, I just want to pinch her teeth. Like, when she goes around the table and is like, oh, how are you? When she gives her stuff to other kids because she wants more princesses. Oh, I mean, such a sweetheart. And that does not come from nowhere. Obviously, we know Tucker is a sweetheart. But again, like I said before, I don't understand where the hate for Sabrina came from, because Sabrina is such a softie. And her daughter inherited a lot of that too. Let's do favorite moments and quotes. I have a lot, guys. Okay. When Logan says that when Grace is studying, she has this like concentration crease on her forehead and he just wants to kiss it away. Logan to Grace when he said, you make me feel safe. Again, Logan to Grace, hockey doesn't matter, school, work, none of it matters if you and I are struggling, if we aren't connecting. They put their relationship first. Tucker threatening Dean, I will always be there at every corner, ruining every important moment of your life until the day you die. I love it because it first starts off with him pretending like, yeah, everything's cool. Go ahead and propose. At my wedding, when Jamie skips around the table and asks each person if they're okay. And then when she gives away her stuff because she wants there to be more princesses. The ladder rung analogy. Aw, Dean to Allie, this woman is mine. She owns my heart. Dean could be really romantic. When Tucker says that daddy duty of gluing back the rhinestones after the end of the day when Jamie's just like ripped it all off from playing. Oh, and he's like, that's not a bad daddy duty. Tucker. During their honeymoon, when Sabrina thinks that she's gonna pee on him for the jellyfish sting, and he's like, hell no. And then when she tries to bring over the fitness guy to do it, he's like, even more like, hell no. When Sabrina's getting Tucker out of jail, and then she's like, watch your woman work. I love you, Sabrina. So Garrett to Logan, he goes, I can't believe you got married without me. And then Hannah to Garrett, it's not a team sport, sweetie. Oh, the bromance between Logan and Garrett. can't. And last but not least, when Garrett and Hannah go to the IKEA to get a carpet, and then he convinces her to get the soft one because he's like, there will be a day when I will be so sexy that you cannot wait for us to go to the bedroom to have sex, and you're gonna have sex right on this carpet. And then she immediately goes, let's take this carpet. So funny. Now we're gonna talk about the show. So if you don't want any spoilers, skip, save, come back after you've watched the show. So thinking about how they came out at different times, it was like basically a completely different generation. And so they had to modernize a lot of things. I understand that. I feel like though in that process of modernizing, they changed up a lot of the character arcs and even the characters themselves. I think that the TV show and the books are completely different beasts. They're both worth consuming, but separately. Like, I don't think anyone should have the expectation that you're going to have a similar experience for both. The characters that I think are most similar to the book are Dean and Allie. And just because they're so sexy in the book, and that translates very well into the show. Their chemistry is on fire. So let's go character by character. I think TV show Garrett is a little bit too stoic compared to book Garrett. And I think they tried to do that to make him have more humility than in the books. Because clearly, as I just mentioned, Garrett in the books is very egotistical, but still lovable. But I think that's hard to translate to TV series, especially nowadays, with so many reality TV shows where there's a guy that you just like hate on because he's such a jerk. I don't think they wanted Garrett to be associated with that type of jerky jock, if that makes sense. So they wanted to make him a little bit more on the serious side. And also, I think the whole approach with Garrett and Hannah's relationship in the show was kind of giving High School Musical vibes. Does anyone feel that? But basically, it's like they are like through music finding each other and building this relationship and healing together, versus in the book I think there was a lot more like sexy kind of dirty moments with healing in between. Let's go on to Hannah. I feel like Hannah in the TV series is also more stoic than Hannah in the books, but not necessarily more layered. She's a little bit more shallow in the TV series than in the book, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because like we only have a certain number of episodes. You can't really dive into the characters as much. The show is to give us something really visually and sound-wise appealing. It's more about the immersive experience rather than about the character arcs or the layers of the characters. Whereas in the books, like we really get to know a lot more about Garrett and Hannah. And I think that's okay. That's acceptable. Moving on to Dean. Oh, I love the casting for Dean. I think he really embodies that playboy energy, but at the same time, like you could still tell that he's a lover boy and that he's just puppy loving over Allie. Like he will like obviously tempt her with, his sexiness, but when he looks at her from far away, in his eyes you could tell that he thinks equally that she's sexy and that he loves her so much. I would say though the buildup in the TV show of like how they fell in love and got him getting to the point of no longer being a playboy, I think it was a little bit rushed. But at the same time, I think they were trying to give us a taste of Dean and Allie before we get into season 2. I think it was a little bit rushed, but at the same time, I understand that they have a very limited number of episodes, and so we're not going to get as much detail about how they built up into the relationship, and that's okay with me. But of the scenes that we did get, the ones that really stood out to me that really made my heart wrench was one when Hannah called her mom and was basically feeling really guilty and apologetic, and then her mom was like, so what did you do wrong? Because if you're apologizing, that means you did something wrong, right? And that really shifted the narrative and perspective for Hannah that like, wait a second. No, I did nothing wrong. That person is the one who did something wrong to me. And just that moment was so deep and impactful and moving. I bawled. The second time I bawled was when Hannah was basically confiding in Allie that, hey, when I mentioned that there was a friend in high school who was raped, it was actually me. And then Allie goes, I know, I was just waiting for you to come to me. That's a real friendship. real deep friendship. Allie did not make it about her. She was extra patient with her. She just wanted to be there for her regardless. She didn't expect or demand that Hannah open up to her about it. I just love that. What other moments that I want to see in the show for sure is when Allie asked Hannah, call Dean. I mean, that was such an impactful scene in the series because it's a pivotal moment for the relationship, and I think we need to see that on screen. Going back to casting Tucker, guys, I think a lot of us are in agreement. Like, whoever they cast for Tucker, great guy, but he's definitely not giving the Southern charm, gentleman vibe that we get from the book. And so I don't know how they're going to make him suddenly become one for the show, or if they're just going to give him a completely different personality and arc. Because I think his Southern charm really plays into his whole personality in the book and how they relate and how Sabrina finds him so endearing and lovable. So I am both nervous but also potentially excited to see how they kind of change that up, because so far I think I could appreciate the changes that they made to make it its own unique thing. I could still have my book Tucker and then have a completely different Tucker on TV. Let me know what you think about what you want to see in the TV adaptation in the next season. I can't wait. I hope you can't wait. And also, what are we covering next week? We are going to go back to Romantasy and dive into Shield of Sparrows. Okay, I read this all the way back in April and I still haven't recorded the episode yet. So now, because I loved it so much, of course, but also to prepare for the episode, I'm rereading it, well, skimming kind of, in order to prepare for this series because it is my fave. Like, it is up there with Throne of Glass, guys, okay? So I cannot wait to get into that series with y'all. Stay tuned, and I'll see you all next week, besties!